Welcome, aspirants. So, have you ever wondered how economists can look at our spending habits and somehow predict major market trends? Well, today, we're going to decode some of those advanced economic models right from your IGNO syllabus. These are not only absolutely crucial for your exams, they're going to change how you look at the entire economy.
I know, it sounds a little crazy, right? But by the end of this explainer, you'll see that there's a direct line connecting your shopping cart to whether a market is stable or not. So how are we going to tackle this? Let's take a look.
First up, we'll dig into how your spending habits get turned into a mathematical model. Then, we're going to uncover that hidden value you get pretty much every time you buy something. After that, we'll see how markets find their balance to set prices. And then, this is a cool one, we'll unravel why some prices swing up and down like crazy. And of course, we'll wrap it all up with a rapid-fire exam cram session.
Okay, let's get right into it. First up, we have this really powerful tool that basically connects abstract economic theory with real-world, messy data. It's called the Linear Expenditure System, or LES for short. So what the Linear Expenditure System does, and this is the magic of it, is it takes this big idea of maximizing happiness or utility and turns it into a simple, straight-line formula. This is a huge deal because it's what lets economists actually test all those consumer theories using real data from the market.
And this is where the model gets really insightful. It breaks down our spending into two distinct parts. You see that gamma symbol? That represents our needs. You know, the absolute minimum we have to buy to get by. Think of it as your essential groceries for the month. Then you have beta. Beta is all about our wants. It's how we decide to spend the money that's left over after our basic needs are covered.
Now, building on that idea of how we make choices, let's talk about the value we get. I mean, think about it. Every time you find a great deal or buy something for less than what you were actually willing to pay for it, you've gained this kind of hidden benefit, right? Well, economists have a name for that: consumer surplus.
Okay, make a note of this one because it's a core concept for your exam. Consumer surplus is literally how economists measure the well-being that we as buyers get from a deal. It's just the fancy technical term for that awesome feeling you get when you score a major bargain.
So it turns out there are a few different ways to measure this surplus. First, you've got compensating variation. This asks, okay, the price of petrol went up. How much cash would I need to give you to make you just as happy as you were before? Then there's the standard Marshallian surplus. That's the one you see most often in textbooks. And finally, equivalent variation kind of flips the script. It asks, how much money would you pay me right now to stop that price increase from happening in the first place?
This little table sums it all up beautifully. And for any normal good, there's a really clear relationship here. The amount of money you'd need to compensate you after the fact, that's C, is always going to be bigger than or equal to the standard measure, S. And that, in turn, is going to be bigger than or equal to what you'd pay to prevent the change, which is E. Let me show you an easy way to remember that.
Here is a super simple trick for your exam paper. Just remember the phrase, can students excel? And boom, you've got the order locked in, C-S-E. That's a definite mark scorer right there.
All right, so let's zoom out a bit.
We've been focused on the individual consumer, but what about the entire market? How does the price of something like, say, onions in a local Indian market actually get decided?
It all comes down to this sweet spot called market equilibrium. This is the magic point where the demand curve, that's all of us wanting to buy stuff, perfectly intersects the supply curve, which represents the businesses trying to sell that stuff for a profit.
You can almost picture a hypothetical auctioneer standing in the middle of the market. If there are tons of onions left over and sellers can't get rid of them, the auctioneer lowers the price. But if everyone's clamoring for onions and there aren't enough to go around, the price gets pushed up. This whole dynamic, this push and pull, is what nudges the market toward that stable equilibrium point.
But hang on, we all know that in the real world, prices don't just snap into place instantly. And this brings us to one of the most interesting concepts, the cobweb model. This thing explains those wild boom and bust cycles we see all the time, especially in agricultural markets.
The absolute key to understanding the cobweb model is this idea of a supply lag. Just think about farmers. They see that onion prices are really high this year, so they decide to plant a ton of onions. But the harvest doesn't come to market until next year. And by then, every other farmer has had the same idea, the market is flooded, and prices totally crash.
So this leads us to a really critical question. If we want to understand if a market is healthy or not, are these wild price swings going to eventually calm down and settle at an equilibrium? Or are they just going to spiral more and more out of control?
Well, the answer is right here in this mathematical condition. For the market to be stable, the absolute slope of the supply curve has to be greater than the absolute slope of the demand curve. Okay, I know that looks like a bunch of math, but what does it really mean? In simple terms, it just means the supply curve needs to be steeper than the demand curve. Or, to put it another way, the demand curve has to be relatively flatter.
And here is an awesome way to lock this into your brain for the exam. Just picture a big, stable pyramid. Where does its strength come from? Its wide, flat base, right? Well, in the cobweb model, that flat base is your demand curve. That's what makes the market stable. A steep demand curve? That's like trying to balance the whole pyramid on its pointy tip. It's just not going to work. It's totally unstable.
Okay, everyone, let's pull all of this together for a quick exam cram. Time for the final takeaways.
These are your absolute must-knows. Seriously, screenshot this, write them down. These terms are the fundamental building blocks for this entire unit. If you can define each of these confidently in the exam, you are well on your way.
And think of this slide as your ultimate cheat sheet for the exam. It boils down the most crucial relationships and gives you those little memory tricks to nail them. Knowing the condition for cobweb stability and that order of surplus measures, that will for sure grab you some easy marks.
So the biggest thing to take away from all this is that these aren't just dry, abstract theories in a textbook. No way. These are powerful tools that you can actually use to analyze and understand the world around you, from what's happening in the stock market to the price of vegetables at your local Monday. So, I'll leave you with a question. Which market would you analyze first? Think about it, and good luck with your exams!